This is Delores, aka Miss D Collins, with a vision of change. And I'm being joined by Vanessa Hawkins, Deana Washington, Karen Florence, and Wihletta McGowan. In today's show, we are going to cover the good and the bad of relationships, how they can be harmful, but also how they can help with healing. Please know that this conversation could be triggering for viewers who may have experienced domestic violence. So there is a content warning. Today, we're going to uplift the stories of healing, awareness, and recovery. So we welcome you to be present, open, and curious, to listen with your heart, not your head, and breathe through this with us. At this time, Vanessa, Deana, Karen, and Wihletta, if each of you could take a few seconds to introduce yourselves, and let's start with Karen. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Karen Florence Davis, and I am happy to be here with you all. I look forward to this.
My name is Vanessa Hawkins, and I am the First and Press Specialist at Journey Center for Safety and Healing, which was formerly known as Domestic Violence and Child Advocacy Center. And it has been a journey for me, and I can tell you that we're just going to say 30 plus years after coming out of a domestic violence relationship, that the journey is still continuing. It's, it's a healing that does not have an ending, but is always ongoing.
Thank you for that, Vanessa. Wihletta.
Hi, I am Wihletta McGowan, as well as a clinician and a private practice owner of Find the Miracle Within, as well as a survivor of domestic violence.
My name is Deana Washington. Currently, I facilitate domestic violence education classes at Journey Center for Safety and Healing. However, I was personally touched by domestic violence because in May of 2007, my sister-in-law was shot and killed and died as a result of domestic violence. The perpetrator is doing life in prison, and as a result, 4 children were left without a mother and had to receive ongoing intensive counseling by Beachbrook. In fact, the entire family received outpatient counseling by Beachbrook, which was very helpful. So I believe that this work saves lives, and I'm really looking forward to this open, honest discussion about relationships and domestic violence.
So at this time, what we're going to move into um, a conversation around harmful relationships. And what I mean by that is, how might someone recognize they are in a harmful relationship, or what are some red flags? And we can start with Karen, and we can kind of just jump in, as you feel, to answer those questions.
I am too a survivor of domestic violence. When I first was abused, I did not know anything about domestic violence. I didn't know where help came from for domestic violence. So my recognizing the abuse was different. Um, it wasn't until I got tired of the abuse, really. And that's when I seeked out for help, which I didn't know where help was to come from. So how do I recognize domestic violence today? Is by the way a person may talk to me, by the person disrespecting me, by the person belittling what I say or cutting me off of what I may think or feel or say. So that's my first recognizing and red flag. So today, I thank God that I am not in any domestic violence relationship today, but at the same time, I've come to recognize it, and I have been able to not only advocate, but also educate others in domestic violence, male and female.
I would like to add that domestic violence is about power and control, and it is a pattern of behaviors that an abusive person uses to gain power and control over a person, like Ms. Karen mentioned, through physical, emotional, verbal, sexual, and even financial and spiritual abuse. An additional, one of the main red flags, like Ms. Karen mentioned, is verbal abuse, where somebody is constantly criticizing you or saying things that's blatantly cruel, disrespectful, and hurtful, calls you ugly names. Okay, so that belittling the verbal abuse. Additional warning signs of an abusive relationship is quick involvement. When someone is rushing you into a relationship, they come on very strong. They may sweet talk and say they never felt this way about you, but it's an abuser's way to pressure you for a commitment very early on in a relationship. Okay. Another warning sign, if someone is extremely jealous, controlling, when they try to isolate you, meaning try to cut you off from your loving ties, your friends, your family, or accuses your friends or family of causing trouble, but basically trying to isolate you from your support system. Another warning sign of an abusive relationship is when the person with the abusive personality blames others for their problems and mistakes. There's no personal accountability. Everything is always somebody else's fault when anything goes wrong. Okay. Also, sudden mood swings, switches from lovingly to possibly explosive, verbally or physically in a matter of minutes. Past battering is also a red flag or a warning sign. And this is not to be taken lightly. So if a person admits to hitting a partner in the past, but said the partner made him or her do it because of their behavior, again, not accepting personal responsibility. And then threats of violence, making statements and threatening the person that they'll kill them. You know, that's a red flag of, that's not an inclusive list, but that's some of the main warning signs that you are in an abusive relationship.
I also share Karen's, like at the moment, I did not know I was in an abusive relationship. I felt uneasy for the fact that my husband always wanted to know where I was going. You know, like at first, you go, oh, that's cute. But then it gets to the point, I'm a grown woman. Why do I have to tell you where I'm going to be at? And why are you always calling me? The first time it happened, I was at my brother's house and he called me and it was like, how do you know I'm here? And he said, I know where you are at all times. It was an uneasiness, like, wait, are you watching me? You know how you like, are you watching me? Why are you, what? So for me, there were signs that had I been aware of as now that they were signs, I would have pulled back. But at the time, you think, oh, it's cute, especially for me, never having anyone to care about me. It was like, oh, he just care about you, girl. He just want to make sure you okay. You have to call when you get where you're going, so he know you got there safely. It's okay. Again, now I look back and go, but you don't call me every time you go some. I don't even know where you are half the time. But every time I step out the front door, you have to know where I'm going, how long it's gonna take me. and when I'm gonna get back. So I see that now. No, that's not a sign of love, but obsession. And that's not a good thing to go into a relationship with.
One of the things that I want to bring to the attention of females, and one of the things that I was clueless to, was the charmers. They charm you, they make you feel real special. And, you know, in that initial phase of how they sweep you off your feet and, you know, makes you feel real good initially. And that is a real red flag. And it may not seem like so, but I tell people, really find out about family history, get to know that, find out what's in the background. They're not going to tell you. When they don't tell you, red flag. These are things that really you need to be careful of. Another red flag is when they ask you, what do you like? And they're not telling you what they like ahead of time. Red flag. Because then they're cluing in on what you like, because they're going to pick up on that to kind of draw in and really like pick on that. And, oh, you like that? Okay, that's what I'm going to like. So these are things that we need to know ahead of time before we, quote, fall in love, before we get vested in the relationship. Because I don't know about you, but once you kind of get vested in, it's kind of hard to pull out, especially when you're young. Now, once we get older, you know, I know me, I'll pull out quick. Bye-bye. See you later. I'm out. But as a young person, it's kind of hard for young to pull out because they're vested.
I see myself in so many different parts of what you just shared, going into a relationship young myself, being very not naive and not knowing. My mom died early on, at the age of 8. I was 18 when my mom passed away. So not having that guidance and just like I say, being naive and not even knowing that you're in abusive relationship. So I thank you all for sharing that. It touched me in so many ways. So moving along, why might someone stay in a harmful relationship? You may have touched a little on it, but why might someone stay? Why do we stay in these type of relationships?
For me, it started off very selfishly. Growing up, being dark kid was, I had this pretty high yellow man that was interested in me. So for me, it started off me really thinking, oh I'm beautiful now because I got this high yellow man is interested in me. Y'all can't call me black and ugly anymore because I'm somebody. I don't care what you say. So it started off very selfishly on my end, which I think he picked up on that I felt that way. So slowly and surely, he began to take over. And when I did make the decision to leave, he threatened to kill me. So automatically, it was like, you gonna do what? Oh, okay. You know what? I just playing. I'm not. I'm just playing. Yeah. Uh-huh. I'm not going anywhere. So once that took place, he realized that he could threaten me. He could back me down. So after that, it became threat. It it became like he knew my family. He knew where they were. He knew where my mother lived. So it was like I have to stay where I should stay because I didn't want my mother or anyone else to get hurt because of a decision that I had made to be with him, especially because the decision was so selfish. It was, I wanted to be cute. You know, like you look and go, girl, don't have your mother getting killed over something that you did. You have to figure out how to get out of it. So I stayed because I didn't want anyone else to be hurt by a decision that I made to be with this person. And again, I truly felt that he knew what I was thinking, because it went from threats to the actual beating with hands, and then it went to beating with bats. And so for me, it was making sure no one else got hurt.
It was so subtle that that initial hit, it was, I'm sorry, it'll never happen again. You know, so I'm like, okay, I took that it would never happen again. And so, and it didn't for a couple of months. And then it got worse. And then it got worse. And that there, when I got out of that, I promised myself never, ever again. And I'm telling you, I'm so glad that I survived that, because I know people who didn't.
Many people recognize that they're being mistreated or even abused, but they choose to stay in a relationship for a number of reasons, just like Miss Vanessa and Miss Wihletta mentioned. And sometimes people that we care about ask, why do you stay? You know, why do you stay? But it's hard to explain, because it's never easy to end a relationship, even a hurtful one. There are common reasons why people stay, and here are just a few. You love the person, okay, flat out. You love your partner, you know, even though they may be abusive, you love them. You have hope that things will change and get better. Oftentimes, the survivor will minimize and say it's not that bad. They minimize what they're going through. They blame themselves sometimes. Self-blame is also real. Like Miss Wihletta mentioned, there's a history of abuse. So if someone tries to warn you, or you know, if they talk about it, very rarely they do, but if they mention their past behavior, abusive behavior, listen. Sometimes a survivor feel hopeless, okay, and may be unsure of where to go. Embarrassment and shame is also very real. So oftentimes survivors will suffer in silence. There may be financial dependence, where you may depend on your partner for that financial support. You may be fear, you just straight up fear, because they threaten you, like Miss Vanessa mentioned. Some survivors don't want to be alone for whatever reason, okay? And you panic at the thought of being alone, even without this abusive person in your life. Some survivors feel loyal to that person. So loyalty is a big issue. They feel like this person has supported them and that you must support this person. So loyalty is an issue. Some survivors, there's a rescue complex. And some survivors or people, period, feel they can change and heal people, and they have that much love that they can heal and rescue someone. But we know that a person with an abusive personality will not change unless they receive some type of intervention and professional help. Children may be involved. That's another reason why survivors stay in unhealthy and abusive relationships. There may be children involved, and some people think that two parents are better than one, but we know that research says that children need one at least one supportive parent in their life that will provide a nurturing, routine, loving, nurturing environment. So two parents, just two parents that are dysfunctional and toxic will create even more dysfunction in the family. So that's a misconception, but people stay because of the children. Another issue is unsure where to go. Okay. And when my sister-in-law was killed, we didn't even know that places like Journey Center for Safety and Healing even existed. But there are places that will help you. We offer a confidential shelter. There is a 24-hour helpline. That number is 216-391-HELP. And I will reiterate that at the end. And there may be spiritual beliefs and abuse. Okay. So if you are into the church, the abuser may cut you off from your faith, okay, or use spiritual scriptures to justify that abuse to you. So it can go both ways, okay. Also, if you're medically fragile or have a disability, sometimes the caregivers are abusive, and although you are being abused, you still depend on that caregiver, that person, for that support. So there are a lot of different reasons. Domestic violence is layered, it's complex, but just know help is available, and that you're not alone.
I just wanted to add, for me, it was shame. I was ashamed of what was going on. I feared that he would hurt someone in my family that I love. And then I also was afraid to tell anybody in my family what was actually going on because I didn't want him to be hurt. So for me, the shame of it kept me locked into the relationship of not wanting to leave, the fear, because I married someone who was a 3-time murderer, who I did not know. I didn't ask the questions. I didn't know to ask the questions. Like Miss D shared, my mom passed when I was 14 years old. So I didn't have that female guidance to show me, to tell me, to warn me, to make me aware of what to look into a relationship. So when I met this person, it was something that I had never experienced before. So the shame kept me, and the fear gripped me to the point where I didn't want anyone to know. And so that's why I stayed, and I didn't like them. And it's something, because today we're able to sit and be in our truth and be able to share our truth. When I married him, I said I do for everybody else that was in that room. I never said I do for me, and I'll never forget, my sister asked me, "Are you sure?" And I just looked at her. I didn't answer her. I just looked at her, because it wasn't, I wasn't sure. But I got married on a 3-day notice. So when you talk about someone saying, "Oh, we get married," and you say, "Oh, okay." I was 18 years old. I didn't know anything. No, actually, I was 19. I didn't know anything, So for me, in staying, I stayed for all the wrong reasons, but I didn't know that they were the wrong reasons. Fear and shame is what gripped me, and that's why I stayed.
Thank you, ladies. And I think I stayed in a relationship because I believed and I trusted when he said he loved me. Um, I thought he loved me, but I had to realize I didn't even really know what love was or what love is, right? I also wanted to prove everybody wrong because I think others saw something that I didn't see in him, and I wanted to prove them wrong. And it came to a point when I started realizing what was, something wasn't right. I looked at myself and was like, you did whatever everybody else expected you to do. And the most important person was my mom. Being raised as Seventh-day Adventist, you don't want to let them down. That's a whole nother conversation. But I just really wanted to prove something to her. And I looked at myself after a while and said, you know what, you dummy. You trying to prove something to somebody that ain't even here. Holy moly. you know, we also want to, I stayed because we want to fix something. I grew up putting things together. So I had that ingrained in me to fix it. So I wanted to fix whatever was wrong with him. So that's why I stayed. And then also growing up, um, these were something too that people in my family, they didn't talk about it. They didn't talk about it, or they talked in riddles. And that was something I didn't understand. When they would say to me, there's more fish in the sea, when they trying to convince me he wasn't right, fish in the sea, what that mean? You know what I'm saying? They didn't explain what they was trying to say. So we kind of carry these things from our young adults, as children. We carry those things that we're taught as children into our adult life. So, how can someone get out of a harmful relationship safely? How did you get out of that type of relationship safely?
For me, I one night after being beat, I had a PDA come on, and the person said to me, "If you think you are so abused, call them." And when I took my children to the daycare, because my face was, it was, they knew I was in a battered situation. They knew I had gotten beat. And the manager of the daycare said, "Whenever you need me, I'm here for you." So I did call, and the person I spoke to said to me, "I need you to come up with a safety plan. I need you to get your paperwork and put it in a place where he can't see it, and make plans ahead of how you're going to escape." So the day that I knew I was leaving, I had my sons put on like three different pair of underwear. I had them put a couple toys in their book bag, because taking them to the daycare was the only place that I could go free, because he knew it was 5 minutes away. He timed me. He knew I could come. I would go and come back. So my sons had on their different layers of clothes. He would always check me. So I had to go, just with one shirt on or whatever. And when I got to the daycare, I looked at the manager and I said, "I have to go now." And she put us in the back seat of her car, and we got all the way down on the floor. And she took me to the place that I needed to be. But I was on the run for like 3 days because the shelter couldn't take me in. So I was staying at different hotels and staying at people's homes. But I had to go places he had never been before in order for me to escape. So the safety planning is something that you have to have in place.
This is something that I just learned. I tell women now, always have an exit plan. And this is something I had to just learn. Abuse can come at any time. And what I mean by that, You can be in a relationship where you have never had abuse, and something can happen to spark abuse. And I just came across this situation in my last relationship. I was married for 2 years, and he cheated, and that was a deal breaker. So I said, okay, that's it. And he got abusive. We had never had any type of abuse, never crossed words, never called each other out our names. There it comes, because I crossed him. Here was the deal. You gotta go. When that happened, I crossed him. When I crossed him, he wanted to cross me. I'm saying this to say this. When I found myself in that situation, I wasn't prepared, because we had never had that situation. I called the police, yada, yada, yada. He just shook me. And because I have a disability, it was abuse. When I tell people now to have an exit plan, what I mean by that, always be prepared. Whatever you got to do, have you a plan, some kind of plan.
What I've come to learn in my life is that once I've left the first abusive relationship, because I had not did any healing, I had not did any work within self, I continued to get into relationship after relationship that was abusive. So I'll share the one that I've been sharing on. Well, in that relationship, I became an alcoholic addict. And for me, alcohol and drugs was my doctor. It was the ambulance, it was the police, it was the everything. Alcohol and drugs became everything for me. So I needed to numb myself to the domestic violence. And that's what I did. And when it came to the end of the relationship, as well as it came to the end for my alcohol and drug addiction, I got sick and tired of being sick and tired, but I didn't know anything about recovery, let alone shelter. I had never heard anyone talk about, oh, let's go to a shelter. Oh, let's go to rehab. That was not the topic of conversation for where I was at. So life took on its turn, and in the end, I was living in an abandoned apartment for 2.5 years with this husband at the time. And I got tired. I got tired of being beat on. I got tired of being dogged. I got tired of the alcohol and the drugs. So my way out was, one day I went to my children's grandmother's house and I asked her if I could spend a night. And by this time I had a social worker in my life. And the social worker came that day, that, when I spent the night, and came the next day. And when he got ready to leave, I asked him, did he know where I can get some help from? So that was my way out. I went into treatment and he went back to prison. So for the next 19 years, he sat in prison and I sat in the rooms of recovery. So that's how my healing started to take place. And that was my way out. And I will be forever grateful, for the learning and to be able to start my healing process. So I just wanted to share that everybody's bottom may be different, but the most important thing is that there is someone who can help each person but it is about being honest. It is about sharing, what's really going on. I was afraid. I didn't know. And even with coming into the rooms of recovery, I still wind up going back to an old relationship that was abusive. I didn't expect that, but I had to learn, that's what it was. So it took me a while even to still learn what abuse was and what it really entailed. I didn't know anything about financial abuse. If a man is taking all your money, that's financial abuse. I didn't know that. Spiritual abuse, and you can't go to church, and even to the point where, I don't want nobody to know that I got a alcoholic addict for a woman. You can't go to meetings, you can't go to church. So I would sneak to meetings, I would sneak to church, and then I would find another lie to tell. I'm so grateful that today I don't have to live like that. So if anything, I tell anyone, give yourself that opportunity and that chance. Like Wihletta said, find your exit, because your exit may work for you, but it might not work for me. So whatever your exit may be, start preparing. There was a situation that I prepared myself for. I knew I was going to leave this relationship, so I started preparing to leave. And I just wanted to share that, and I just hope that each one of us get that opportunity to be able to release ourselves and be free from that bondage, because it was a bondage for me. And today I'm free. Today I'm happy and free.
And I just want to stress too that domestic violence happens to people in all walks of life, regardless of a person's age, gender, sexual orientation, race, religion, education, profession, and socioeconomic status. Okay? And it takes, when we talk about safety planning, it takes 6 to 7 attempts for a person to actually leave an abusive relationship. But each time that person leaves, they learn a little bit more, get a little stronger, and go back out there again. So it takes 6 to 7 attempts. And usually that equates to about 1.5 to 2 years to totally extract yourself from an unhealthy or abusive relationship, okay? So it's important when we talk about safety planning that there are a number of things that could be done, okay? So when we talk about safety planning, some people think it's just when you decide to leave, and that's a part of it, but that's not the only parts to safety planning. So I want to go over a few things. Okay, when we talk about safety planning, think about what you can do in your physical space where you are, because you may not be able to leave, but ask yourself, what can I do to keep myself safe where I am? Can you make sure your locks are working, that you have locks, or install additional locks, okay? Make sure your screens are secure and not cut or torn. Make sure you have adequate lighting. Make sure that you don't have any large shrubs around your house. Put up curtains or blinds to make sure you have a layer, of protection. You can install a security system, or invest in a low-cost camera system, okay? Just so you can have cameras available, okay? But it's things you can do in your physical environment. When you can't just automatically cut and run and leave, what can you do in your physical environment to make it safe? Okay. The next thing, what can you do in the community to feel safe? Is it some places you don't need to go, where it's trouble? Okay. Some toxic people that you need to stay away from. Okay. It's some things maybe places you don't need to go. Okay. Or make sure you're doing things in the daylight instead of running errands at night, keeping your cell phone charged and on you. letting someone know where you are, just so they can have a place of reference if anything should happen. But what can you do to stay safe in the community? The next thing about safety planning is your emotional safety. So what that means is taking care of you. How do you know when you're feeling down? What do you do when you, how do you know when you're feeling down? But two, what do you do to pick yourself up, to make you you again? What do you do? Now, we do know that some people use drugs and alcohol as coping mechanisms, okay? I don't recommend that, but that is a reality, okay? But what can you do? Is it talk to a friend? Is it seek, talk to your pastor? Is it to be involved in activities like yoga or walking? Is it prayer or meditation, reading, journaling, listening to music? What can you do to take care of you and your physical safety while you're in the midst of all of this, okay, with healthy coping mechanisms? And then safety planning, that's when you decide to leave. You do need to have a plan, okay? You need to take your important documents. You need to have some money. So you need to be putting a little money aside if you decide you want to leave, to take cash, your important documents, change of clothes. And then you need to ask yourself, who are you going to reach out to? Who are you going to call? Sometimes you may not want to call the police, but are you going to let your family or friends know? You have to know, let your family and friends know what you're going to do, someone that you can trust. When you have kids, you need to think about their safety. So you and the kids are going to leave, or are you going to have someone else watch the children while you work on your exit plan? Well, all of these things are considerations if you decide to leave. And again, I want to reiterate that you are in the most harm when you decide to leave, because the person is losing that power and control over you. So you are in danger. So it is important to have a safety plan, okay? And remember, if you can't leave automatically, you can think about your physical safety, where you are, being safe in the community, your emotional safety, and ultimately that safety plan where it's more detailed, okay? But there is help. Journey Center for Safety and Healing, we have a 24-hour helpline. That number is 216-391-HELP or 216-391-4357. We have a live text to chat feature, which is www.journeyneo.org. If you're not ready to leave, or you need counseling, call our main number, 216-229-2420. You may want counseling. If you're not ready to dive into counseling, we do provide virtual support groups, because sometimes we don't have those people who are objective or won't throw things in our face, okay? So this is a non-judgmental way where your feelings and experiences will be validated, and then you come as you need. Sometimes people don't want to dive straight into counseling, but we do offer that support group if you need that support along the way. Some people ask, well, how can I help? What can I do? What survivors need are non-judgmental people that'll listen, to validate their strength and getting up every day and moving forward, taking care, going to work, taking care of their children, their families. Individuals who are survivors need empathy, safety. They need to be believed. They need to have connection with others. Survivors need options and resources, okay? Validation, support, protection. And again, that emotional safety piece is important too.
So how do harmful relationships impact children, and from a healthy relationship standpoint, how can relationships play a role in healing, and how do you find healing in your journey?
I just wanted to share a little bit on how my children were impacted. You know, I have a saying, my oldest son is all of me. My oldest twin son is the old me. My youngest twin son is the new me. And my last three have inspired me to become who I am today. My 25-year-old, he's such a joker. He loves to laugh. He enjoys life. And that's something that I took on from him. My 21-year-old, I'm sorry, my 25-year-old is the one that is gentle, kind, and meek. So that's is something that I took on. My 21-year-old is the one that's the joker. And my daughter, she's such a lady. You know, I had such a hard sternal about myself. You know, I put up a wall. So my children helped me to identify and see me today. You know, my first three children were really impacted to the point of the domestic violence, the on-hand piece. My last three, they took on the domestic violence of the financial abuse and the controlling person. So my children, I'll never forget one day my son, we was all in this argument with his dad. I was in an argument with his dad, and my son went to school, and everything that he saw that morning, he exhibited at school. So that's how my son was impacted. That's how all my children were impacted, because they seen what they seen and they took on that behavior. So for me today, I am very careful in what I do and how I share my life with my children and who I am today as far as being in a relationship. You know, I think for me, I protect them more than anything now. I'm gonna share this one last experience. I'll never forget my neighbors upstairs. They were always in it, at it, against each other. And one day, the mom, she started pulling the knife out on the father. And so the children ran downstairs to me. And for the first time in all of my children's life, I recognized the harm and the damage that had been done, because these three little girls was in such a fear in their face expression. And it made me say, oh my God, that's probably how my children was. That's what their experience was like. So I got the opportunity to see and identify everything that my children went through from the eyes of looking at three little girls. So then that encouraged me to do something different. So that, with that experience, I started learning how to love myself, but also love my children through it all.
My child, my daughter, she's a grown adult today. And the way it impacted her, she became a prosecutor, and she's very hard. She prosecutes everybody and everything. And on the flip side, my granddaughter, she's loving because she sees the other side of me. She sees the person who today, after I have received healing, so I share things with my granddaughter where I didn't share things with my daughter. We shouldn't try to hide it, because they know, even when we're hiding it, they know those emotions of us. So I encourage people not to hide it. You know what I'm saying? Don't hide it, because they know it anyway. The other piece of the healing piece of nobody is all bad and nobody is all good. So I reflect on my past relationships. I reflect on the good of them and the bad. And I reflect on the part that I played, because we all